Well, this is a meme now. On dating apps, young men are telling women that they will be eating that blank like Haitian migrants, as others are spreading the message through song and dance on social media apps like this.
They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, eat the cat, eat the cat. They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, eat the cat, eat the cat.
This, as it's fair to say that our society's etching ever so closer, if not already there, to full-on idiocracy. But don't worry, guys. Everything's going to be fine, as the slate is going to be cleared with the potential of World War III and apocalyptic nuclear escalations that are currently unfolding right now in Ukraine, as the United States is hinting that they soon will be lifting restrictions on Ukraine from using long-range advanced missile systems deep inside of Russia. So yeah, that's going on.
And this is what's happening. Dogs.
But yeah, at least the music and the memes are pretty good. They're not bad. That's, of course, the situation domestically here inside of the United States is pretty crazy, pretty awful, pretty off the wall, as we just came off one of the biggest presidential debates in American history, where we're finding out there was a lot of clear bias here, as we're finding out today that Kamala Harris's friends were the ones who were overseeing the entire operation. That didn't surprise a lot of people, especially with the behavior of ABC news anchors that are now being heavily criticized even by other corporate media outlets like the Daily Mail. As of course, there was a lot of fact-checking, there was a lot of interruptions. There was about 11 directly against Donald Trump and 0 for Kamala Harris. This as Kamala Harris clearly spread a lot of lies and mistruths. Now, Donald Trump said some things that were incorrect as well. But it's also important to note here that he was fact-checked on some things that actually were correct, that he did say right, as ABC News obfuscated many key points and key details in a lot of the framing of the questions that they brought up that were absolutely extremely partisan. One of the things that they fact-checked Donald Trump on that they were absolutely wrong about, and there was a bunch, was the crime statistics going up, as of course they are being cooked, they are being manipulated, as a lot of violent crimes are now being downgraded to misdemeanors, as the FBI's universal crime data system now has an optional system when it comes to reporting data, as many Americans, specifically in major key areas all around the United States, are reporting a major uptick in crime that is usually left unpunished. This, as there was also a lot of jabs thrown at Joe Biden, the current president of the United States, during the presidential debates, that recently also decided to don Donald Trump hat, which his team is saying was a gesture of unity, but could be a signal towards Joe Biden not really being happy that Kamala Harris threw him under the bus many times during the presidential debates, and more specifically, didn't just defend him, but of course, even directly criticized and attacked some of the policies that she was fomenting, as of course, Biden now is someone that the DNC is doing their best in order to try to get rid of from the national scene. It does seem like he's being slighted, he's being absolutely ridiculed, viciously attacked, and let's be honest here, this could also be a signal of old age, but it could also be a signal of Biden being angry that he was pushed out of this larger political race. This, as there's some controversy surrounding Kamala Harris's earrings, as some people are claiming that she had these Bluetooth-style jewelry pieces inside of her ears that were giving her talking points about what she should be saying and not saying during the presidential debate. Now, we haven't been able to independently confirm if these were Bluetooth or not, as I think one of the biggest deciding factors of this presidential debate was the conversation specifically around foreign policy, to which now the corporate media is responding to by specifically going as far as to say that, quote, Donald Trump is a de facto, quote, Russian asset, something that, of course, we have been hearing since 2016. This, of course, amplified after the two presidential candidates this year discussed their larger approach approach towards foreign policy, specifically describing their different types of approaches for Ukraine as, very interestingly, they pretty much agreed on the situation in the Middle East, something that also is a very inconvenient issue for the Democrats and its young voter base that is disenfranchised by the current Democratic foreign policy inside of the Middle East. As yesterday was a major anniversary for America, paying tribute to all the lives lost 23 years ago and the many lives that were lost right after it, as the United States government spent trillions of dollars fighting a global war on terror that 20 years later on has only increased the levels of influence, money, support, and capabilities of these larger terrorist organizations that we given up our personal freedoms in order to stop, that have only grown and fostered and have also been given the latest kind of greatest American technology, along with weaponry that are now in their hands, as there are now intel reports, even from the United States, specifically referencing advanced, high-tech American military gear that could shoot down airplanes, go after specific targets miles and miles away, that have been currently getting lost inside of Ukraine, as a former CBS report even reported how a lot of the weapons, a lot of our tax dollars that are spent on these weapons are in many instances not even making their way down to the frontline troops inside of that particular country. This as Ukraine is, of course, having a significant manpower shortage inside of their country, as they are fighting a country that is vastly more populated than they are, while also having a production capability with natural resources that they are way more abundant in. A conflict where clearly they are the underdog and are relying on American and other European nations, predominantly, overwhelmingly American support, to continue this larger conflict that has been wrecking and destroying the lives of an entire generation of young Ukrainian men. Men that will no longer be here on this earth, as the leader of that country has literally made deals with BlackRock, Goldman Sachs in order to rebuild that country, but also implement new immigration policies that, of course, would allow people from the third world to come into Ukraine and to replace the young men that are being sacrificed right now. This, as the numbers of lives lost are extremely significant here on both sides, as the true numbers are unknown. But one thing that is very clear here are that these numbers are vastly bigger than a lot of people expect them to be, as we saw a different approach from Donald Trump and Kamala Harris when it comes to this particular conflict, as Kamala Harris, the current vice president of the United States, specifically spoke about staying the course, not giving up on this larger military-industrial complex endeavor that largely within the last few months has been a stalemate, where young Slavic men are just ruthlessly being eviscerated and taking each other's lives with advanced robotics that are being shipped from all over the world. And it's not only just money and lives being wasted away here, but the Ukrainian country that is being obliterated and destroyed from within. This, as the United says, don't worry, we'll pledge another $717 million in new economic aid to Ukraine. Money that, of course, is printed, borrowed, and deflated with the more that it is spent. As an estimate, $325 million will be spent in energy support to help repair and restore power facilities inside of Ukraine that the Russians have been significantly striking. There's going to be $290 million in humanitarian aid, which is desperately needed for the people there. As in my opinion, continuing this lunacy, continuing the life loss here is absolutely ridiculous. And if you care about Slavic men, if you care about people, you want to, of course, make sure that wars end. If you want to sacrifice people, sacrifice countries, sacrifice infrastructure, you put them to war and you continue to have them fight this war. That is just as clean, as simple as I personally see it, and that's exactly how Donald Trump sees it as well. As he was asked specifically, does he want Ukraine to win? As ABC moderators didn't even define what winning actually means. And if you're able to define Ukraine winning by being able to save lives, save at least some of their territory, stop this constant onslaught and this current state of war, I would say, yeah, That's actually winning. If you're able to get rid of the national emergency that's happening in Ukraine right now, if you're able to give them back their elections, if you're able to give them back their normal way of life, that to me is winning. But that's not, of course, how the corporate media that usually is bought up by the military-industrial complex sees it. As Donald Trump was asked once again, do you really want Ukraine to win? As again, the terms were not clearly defined here, but we knew exactly what ABC News was alluding to. As Kamala Harris has the more corporate military-industrial complex approved talking point that also significantly fills their coffers and is able to, of course, transfer more money away from the American taxpayer into this larger endeavor, this larger war, this larger fight that, in my opinion, needs to be ended through a peace deal. This, as NBC News has this article saying, quote, Trump won't say if he wants Ukraine to win the war. Again, what does winning mean? We don't even know what that means. This is a very sophisticated, complicated situation. This, as the Secretary of State literally visited Kiev this Wednesday, as his rhetoric there could severely escalate the situation in very dangerous ways. We'll get into his comments in a little bit, but this was the exchange on ABC News that I thought was very important for the American people to understand the key difference when it comes to a foreign policy approach to this larger endeavor.
But he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did.
And one of the things that the United States kind of declared and alluded to was the future of Ukraine inside of NATO. This is what a lot of people believe sparked up this conflict and then started the larger kind of escalations that led to Russia starting officially this war and invading Ukraine. As Politico is now writing that Trump just showed how he'd approached the war in Ukraine, saying that he gave no ground in his refusal to explicitly cheer for Ukraine's success. And of course, we want Ukraine's success. As a Polish man, as a country that is also Slavic, that is very close, that has been doing a lot for the country of Ukraine, as of course Poland has taken in more Ukrainian refugees than any other country in the European Union right now. Simply put it, we don't want the continuation of our Slavic people to continue. We don't want them to die. We don't want them to lose their lives. We don't want them to be fighting a battle for what larger kind of geopolitical purposes and agenda here. What's really going on here is the question that I think a lot of people should be asking themselves here. As Kamala Harris is now suggesting, Russia could potentially target Poland if Ukraine loses the war. And again, what does loses the war mean? As Russia has offered a peace deal recently that was just denied. A peace deal that, of course, makes Ukraine also succeed a lot of territory in their region, something that NATO and Ukraine sees as a non-starter here. But honestly speaking here, the peace proposal that was officially kind of proposed by Elon Musk is a rational one that he proposed a couple months ago that if Ukraine would have taken, that I think would have been way better off. Now, when it comes to these kind of larger negotiations, when it comes to these larger kind of peace deals, we have to understand here that there needs to be a give and take, not just by the Ukrainians, but also the Russians. The Russians have their list of demands. I think Ukraine needs to come with their list, and let's meet in the middle, but at least offer up a counter proposal. At least have the negotiations here. As of course, within human history, there's always individuals that are able to, of course, negotiate and work out peace deals that, again, both sides won't be happy with, but at least the fighting stops. And to me, this war is being fought for political purposes rather than actual strategic logistical ones. As of course, CNBC News today is also reporting that Russia just turned the table on Ukraine, launching a counter-offensive inside of its country, Kursk, where they had major successes and were able to repel Ukrainian forces that made a very bold incursion into their territory last month. This says the Russians are now reporting that they have taken back about 10 settlements in the Kursk region near the border of Ukraine. As today, The Guardian is also reporting that the West's missile go-ahead to Ukraine, quote, would hold no shortage of risk. And absolutely, as there is some serious conversations right now about the United States allowing Ukraine to use long-range advanced missile systems deep into Russian territory to target their military and energy infrastructure. This, as of course we need to understand, would be a dramatic impact and escalation on this entire conflict. And as even The Guardian puts it, if not carefully calibrated, could dramatically impact this conflict. As the U.S. Secretary of State is hinting that the United States will lift these restrictions, as The Guardian is also reporting that the decision has already been made in private and represents something that, of course, Russia will be escalating to in response. As Antony Blinken now has given his strongest hint yet that the White House is about to lift this restriction, which not only will be a game changer here, but also something to look at when it comes to the larger potential escalation of this into a largely global conflict. This is where we are at right now. As of course, imagine if the shoe was on the other foot. Imagine if the United States had a conflict with Mexico. The United States invaded Mexico, and countries like China and Russia would be sending long-range ballistic advanced missile systems to Mexico so they could, of course, target places like New York City and Washington, D.C. As it's also important to note here that one of the largest attacks on Moscow actually happened right before the presidential debate. This says last month we saw the NATO chief back Ukraine's invasion of Russian territory, something that the Russians have said was a red line, and it does look like there are deliberate attempts in order to trigger Russia's red line here that has been now kind of routinely violated here. As another major statement by Antony Blinken this Wednesday stated that Ukraine's path to NATO is irreversible. As of course, these were the topics of discussions that led to the larger escalations that led to, of course, Russia invading it. As the United States is spending a lot of its money and resources here, it's important to note that China, one of its chief economic rivals on the world stage, is, of course, promoting trade, infrastructure, and their new form of colonization, which they're implementing inside of Africa, as they just had a major Chinese-African summit inside of China, where they were able to fly in all of the leaders of African countries and governments, creating a Chinese-African cooperation force, as the Chinese Belt and Road kind of initiative is showing some significant parallels to global influence to, of course, American hegemony. This says China also has been a major supporter of Russia, as NATO is even warning China to stop supporting Russia in its war efforts against Ukraine. India also is becoming a major trade partner to Russia. Russia also just expanded their trade routes to their country. Iran, of course, has been providing a lot of drones to Russia that have been playing a major impact throughout this entire conflict, as Al Jazeera is reporting that Russia's and NATO's red lines in Ukraine are shifting, highlighting a very dangerous situation, as the Ukrainians are demanding more Western weapons to attack Russian territory. This, as we have to understand here, we're playing with fire, something that Al Jazeera even writes could potentially trigger an outright war between NATO and Russia, between the United States and Russia. Nuclear powers that could see each other fight each other, where the situation could quickly expand, quickly get out of control, and reach a level of very dangerous proportions, as even CNN is reporting today that, quote, preparing for the apocalypse, here is why collaboration is essential. It is, as some people are prophesizing that World War III is around the corner, and that to me is just dumb, not smart. I think we could be spending our time and resources and money in more fruitful kind of endeavors. And to me, sending young people off to die for fight for wars for even unknown, larger kind of geopolitical goals and aspirations that haven't been clearly defined to the American people, as the only thing Kamala Harris had to say about the continuation of this war is that, quote, we don't give up. And give up on what? What are you talking about? What are the clear goals and objectives here? What do you want to accomplish? Why are we doing this? Why are we forcing Ukraine to do this? As of course, there are a lot of Ukrainians that don't like this war, that want this war to end. Their voices matter more than ever, in my opinion, as at least let's get some negotiations started here. And if you agree with that, share this video with your friends and family members. Again, we are a fully independent media organization. We don't work with any kind of big partnerships or organizations. You finance us, you support us directly through, of course, LukeUnfiltered.com, where we are able to provide you unfiltered access and information with special videos just for members. As of course, you also get 3 master classes about traveling the world, about being a journalist, about surviving the apocalypse. We literally have the apocalypse survival training class. Lots of important videos that you could download with one click of a button, especially when it comes to land navigation, filtering your own water, starting your own fires.
I should have hit him up for a hike while I'm down here in Florida. We could have gone on one of those nature hikes that I keep getting the emails about. Okay, so you heard it here first. World War III. It's dumb. We shouldn't do it. But why are we using Ukraine as a prophylactic so America can get it on with Russia? Why are we tolerating NATO trying to expand into Ukraine when we know it's a direct provocation on a really big nuclear power that we probably don't want to be wrestling with right now? And then the other aspect that comes to mind is there's a history of people trying to mess with Russia and invade their borders heading into winter. And what we just heard were successful stories about Ukraine incursions behind Russian lines, penetrating into their territory. And I'd say you should study what happened to Napoleon and what also happened to Adolf Hitler, because they both went into Russia and they gained a lot of ground in the fall, and they were doing really good until the Russians went around and cut them off and then trapped them and then starved and froze them to death twice in history. So if you don't want to be the third time Johnny, NATO and the United States maybe back off trying to push all those innocent Ukrainians who are in the middle and have nothing to do with the geopolitical policy of George Soros and NATO that's being unfolded in their country. Because if you were to go back to the 1993 NATO pamphlet, like NATO had a meeting, and at the meeting they got a table, and at the table there's a pamphlet, and the pamphlet's the agenda for the meeting. You want to know the title for that? If you've watched this show enough, you already know it. But if you haven't watched this show enough, you might need to know the George Soros meeting at NATO. The pamphlet is titled "Toward a New World Order, NATO and the Future of Europe." It's about taking NATO and using Europe to make a new world order. And so every 10 years since 1993-94, when that pamphlet came out, like there was the 2004 Orange Revolution in Ukraine, the 2014 Maidan coup, and now the 2024, what you see going on is like part 4, chapter 4, in a longer process of destabilization of a major nation state. Like Russia is a huge place, and Trump's right. They do have nukes over there in Russia. So, well, that kind of helps us segue to the next story, because we're going to take the most recent story first tonight. We're going to go to the attempted assassination of former President Donald J. Trump earlier today. And we're going to take a look at it, because if Trump were not in the realm of the presidency, like Putin might start pushing more buttons, especially on Kamala. So if Trump's around, I feel like World War III is like, you're Johnny Heisman and you're keeping it away from us. To do anything else, to have 4 more years of the same type of Biden policies, leftist policies, weak woke, is that synonym? Policies would make us a target of strong men in the geopolitical arena. So I do want to go to the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. But before I do that, I got to show you this, because I thought, I'm on the road. I don't have my full setup. Let me just see. I know there were these stories out there, Trump shots in vicinity. It doesn't come up on the internet search. And then I thought maybe I got too many words. Trump, quote, in vicinity. Still, you can't find any information. And yet, if I were to go to YouTube, it's in the phrase of every story. Vicinity, 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 vicinity. By the way, none of these say assassination attempt, do they? All down here. Okay. This is more recent. This is 1 hour ago. So for the first several hours of today, nothing to see here. Everyone continue on. The shots were not related to an assassination attempt. And then, oh, later, after everyone's going to bed, oh, yeah, it was. We hope you don't notice that. So it's interesting how news unfolds, evolves, right? 4 hours ago, it's just shots were reported in his vicinity. It doesn't say Secret Service shot back at the guy with the AK-47 in the shrubs trying to kill the former president. No, it doesn't. And I think when they phrase it like this, it can be disingenuous. So 1 hour ago, Time Magazine, they got the memo. It's an assassination attempt. But a couple hours ago, the memo was out. Hey, it's just gunshots in his vicinity, everybody. Okay. So we're going to go to that. And then I've got some links to go through in production chat here that are being fed on this live, unfolding, real-time story. And we're doing this all live. So let's go to some of the official pieces. And then I'm going to show you the only piece of evidence that I know to be out there at this point, which is the press conference with Secret Service, FBI, and local police, which was, they say at the beginning, we're going to tell you everything. As opposed to that thing that happened in July, we're going to tell you everything we know right now as of when we know it. And it does make more sense so far. We found out more in the first couple hours after this attempted assassination than we found out in the first several weeks of the last attempted assassination on the former president, Donald J. Trump. So let's go to these clips, then we'll come back, and Scott, LD, and I will make some comments on those types of pieces of evidence.
As it happens in real time. And that's what we do here on Live Now from Fox, react to what's happening in real time as it happens. And I do want to put up some other images we're getting right now from the Martin County Sheriff's Office on Facebook. And I want to put these up of this potential suspect, the potential car that they pursued on I-95. As this was the post, what they wrote on social media said the northbound I-95 at 714 was shut down based on Ebola information released by Palm Beach County. The Martin County Sheriff's Office has stopped a vehicle taking a suspect into custody believed to be connected to a shooting incident at Trump International at Palm Beach County. We will update this information as it becomes available. You could see the amount of law enforcement shutting down I-95 in Florida, a main corridor of that in the Sunshine State. They have brought a person, as they say it, believed to be connected to a shooting incident at Trump International. And I do want to ask you, because you see these images coming in right now, Ken, of the law enforcement on hand. What do we make of this? What do we make of just the amount of force on this? They did pursue this. They say they are connected. Do we read into anything there?
So, this is a suspect that was involved in a shooting shooting in the vicinity of the former president. If a person is engaged in that type of shooting, they may be very well armed with other weapons in their vehicle. And so you see a if a person is engaged in that type of shooting, they may be very well armed with other weapons in their vehicle. And so you see a here of a president. So I'm not surprised to see this many cars involved. I'm not surprised to see this becoming such an incident. but, with this many law enforcement members involved. And this had gone out as a bolo to all law enforcement. So there's a lot of interest here and a lot of different police agencies working this. But now FBI and Secret Service will also have responded to this incident here, and they will be moving with the suspect to either Secret Service or to FBI office or to local law enforcement. It's not clear where they're going to go to with the suspect to conduct their interview with them. But, it's not surprising to see that amount of law enforcement.
No, that is very true. The amount of people on there, as they did shut down I-95 at 714 in it.
Okay, guys, you ready? Little rules of the road like we always talk about ahead of time. We are going to give you, when I say we have a representative from the FBI, from the Secret Service, from the State Attorney's Office. We are going to give you everything we have. Everything. All right? So when we get done, think about your questions, because we're not going to take a lot. And keep them to the information that you heard. Don't get into what ifs, and because of this, we're not going to go there. All right? So keep that in mind, and we'll be good. So here we go. All right, 1:30 this afternoon. Call came out, shots fired. That was called in by the Secret Service. Because we're in constant contact with them all the time, we were notified of that, and we had units here that immediately sealed off the area. Fortunately, we were able to locate a witness that came to us and said, hey, I saw the guy running out of the bushes. He jumped into a black Nissan, and I took a picture of the vehicle and the tag, which was great. So we had that information. Our real-time crime center put it out to the license plate readers. And we were able to get a hit on that vehicle on I-95 as it was headed into Martin County. We got a hold of Martin County Sheriff's Office, alerted them, and they spotted the vehicle and pulled it over and detained the guy. After that, we took the witness that witnessed the incident, flew him up there, and he identified as the person that he saw running out of the bushes and jumped into the car. Now, in the bushes where this guy was is a AK-47 style rifle with a scope, 2 backpacks which were hung on the fence that had ceramic tile in them, and a GoPro, which he was going to take pictures of. So those are being processed right now. The Secret Service agent that was on the course did a fantastic job. What they do is they have an agent that jumps one hole ahead of time to where the president was at. And he was able to spot this rifle barrel sticking out of the fence and immediately engage that individual, at which time the individual took off. So that's what we know about the investigation. We have somebody in custody right now that is a potential suspect. We got a little bit more work to do on it, but as we usually do, as soon as we decide that we're going to book him into the county jail and the charges that he's going to be booked into, we'll get those to you and we'll get a picture of him and we'll get you his background. So now I'm going to turn it over to the representative of the Secret Service, and he's going to make a brief statement.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I first want to thank all of our law enforcement partners, to include the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office and the Martin County Sheriff's Office, for their involvement today. Former President Donald Trump is safe and unharmed following a protective incident shortly before 2 p.m. on Sunday at Trump International Golf Club at West Palm Beach. The U.S. Secret Service personnel opened fire on a gunman located near the property line, and this matter is under investigation. I'll turn it over to my partners over at the FBI.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Veltri. I'm the special agent in charge of the FBI's Miami field office. The FBI has assumed the role as the lead federal law enforcement agency in the investigation of the incident that occurred earlier today at Trump International Golf Course here in West Palm Beach, Florida. We've deployed a number of resources, including investigative teams, crisis response team members, bomb technicians, and evidence response team members as well. What we need right now is for the public to avoid the area around the golf course. We will continue to support this investigation with the full resources of the FBI, alongside our partners with the United States Secret Service and the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, as well as Martin County Sheriff's Office and state and local law enforcement. I would ask that if anyone has any information that may assist with this investigation, to contact our tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI or at tips, that's TIPS .FBI.gov. Thank you.
David?
Hi, I'm Dave Ehrenberg, State Attorney for Palm Beach County. I want to thank Sheriff Bradshaw and our partners at the local, state, and federal levels. I'm here because our prosecutors are currently working up warrants and a motion for pretrial detention for the suspect. In that way, he will be kept in custody. But our filing of these warrants and charges at the state level does not preclude federal charges that could be coming. But in the meantime, it looks like the warrants and the pretrial detention motion will happen first. And again, I want to thank the cooperation we've had with our federal partners and at the local level. And thank you all for being here today.
Okay, we're going to make these pictures available to you. It'll show you a picture of the backpack and the rifle. And there's also a GoPro on the fence there where he was intent on filming what was going on. Even though we're going to have to secure a couple of areas around the golf course here, the public doesn't need to panic. We know that we got a post office, a library, and a school down the street. So we'll make it convenient for you to get to all the places you need to go, get your kids to school, get them over here to the post office or wherever else you need to go. It's safe. There's no more danger here, and we'll make it very convenient for you. So having said that, we're going to take a very limited amount of questions, and you can direct them to who you want to answer the question.
Sheriff, did this individual make any statements as he was being detained?
No statement right now as far as his involvement in the incident, and there's further investigation to be completed.
What was his demeanor like?
Yeah, I'm not sure if maybe the Secret Service gentleman answered. I misunderstood, or I couldn't quite understand. So there was a rifle. So one of your agents saw on the golf course saw a rifle pointing through a fence. Was it a chain link? Okay, so he saw that, the agent.
That is correct. Yes.
And the president or the former president was on the course behind him. How close?
It was 1 or 2 holes behind.
1 or 2.
That because the bubble moves through the golf course, so our agents will get there first, clear it. He noticed that the rifle was pointed out. Our agents engaged. We are not sure right now if the individual was able to take a shot at our agents, but for sure our agents were able to engage with the suspect. I don't know that.
Doesn't appear so.
Is there a moment?
Yep. Now,
How far away was the president? How far away was Donald Trump when this gentleman was caught and stopped?
probably between 300 and 500 yards. But with a rifle and a scope like that, that's not a long distance.
For the Secret Service, how far was your agent from the would-be assailant?
That I'm not sure right now. We're still looking into it.
Reports of the 4 rounds of ammunition were fired. Were all 4 of those from your agent?
That is correct. 4 to 6. We're not sure yet.
Was there a long distance? Explain why.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And on WWIII, I was wondering what how this was able to happen, and for future reference, is there any up security in the golf course?
I didn't hear all that.
Go ahead, pull it. All right, so that's the major parts of that press conference that have confirmed the facts as they are known right now. But the listing of 2 backpacks with ceramic tiles in there, I think that unless the guy was on the way to do a kitchen, that's probably a form of body armor. which also goes to kind of show intent. He expected eventually to have shots fired back at him. And from the story, as we hear it from there, Secret Service returned 4 shots, and there's a possible total of 6 shots that were taken. So that would leave 2 for the guy with the AK-47 who was in the bushes and experienced an increasing perimeter around Trump as he moves through the golf course. The agent mentioned the bubble. That would be the layer of protection of an advanced agent going a hole or 2 ahead to make sure there's no gun barrels sticking out of the bushes. Also, important little detail in there. If you have useful information, the number is 1-800, it's FBI tips. What was it? Tips. You have to make sure you spell it right, because if you spell it TITS, you get a whole different FBI information channel that I'm sure is interesting in a different way. So if you guys know anything, you look up that FBI number, but I'm pretty sure anyone here who's watching this, we didn't have anything to do with it. And we're learning about it a little bit sooner than the general public, because you're investing some time in Grand Theft worldliness. Now, Scott, this is the second credible assassination attempt, because there's been a couple others. There was the one at the RNC convention when the guy tried to walk in with the AK-47 and the ski mask and the scream mask. Then there was like a Pakistani immigrant that tried to assassinate Trump or something like that. But basically, the guy in July, Crooks, who shot Trump's ear, and this guy today who was exchanging fire with Secret Service at the golf course, but that's just shots in the vicinity for Trump, What do you think about this story, and do we expect more stories like this before November?
Well, I mean, I hate the notion that third time's a charm. I hope not. I mean, that would just be like unbelievable. I was driving home because I was working today, and I like heard rumblings about it. I had people texting me, and I was like, oh my God. And then like the thought went through my head, like just painting a picture in my head about like if he were to get killed, like how insane that would be, man. Like I'm just, I don't know. It's really frustrating too, because the scrutiny is now going to be shifted to the Secret Service again. We're going to have that whole conversation, right? And it's just like, here we go down this, and it's like, I just don't know. At what point, is there any accountability? Or what's going on with that? Does he even have Secret Service when he's at the golf course? What's going on here, man? And it's like, it's just crazy, man. I mean, it's all going to get pinned on them probably again. And it's like, it's the same conversation again, but does anything change? And, I don't know, man. It's just really frightening at this point. It just sucks, man. Stupid.
I would think at this point, anyone who's not on Team Trump on Secret Service doesn't get on his detail anymore. Yeah. And that the guys who are there are legitimately trying to keep their primary safe. And the bubble did catch the guy. And let's face it, this is 2 times. Like the first guy, Crooks, he did shoot Trump's ear. So you have to, he did get a round on target. This guy, you don't shoot from cover, but stick your barrel out of the bushes to be seen. You don't put a scope on an AK. Like there's some things you do and things you don't do. And this is the guy who's like, it's fortunate for the American people that he's not very good at what he was trying to do, because there are people trained by our government and just much better at doing that from further away. And those would be like actual threats, but those aren't actually going on. What you have are like nincompoops who can get within the perimeter and cause chaos in a situation that never, ever in history should that person have been able to cause some chaos. Mm-hmm. So now the question is, how do these people get the idea oriented, go and pick a situation where they think they can penetrate Secret Service ever increasing tightening of security? Because there's been several of these instances now. They're going to get to the point where they don't want Trump to do rallies. And I think that might be a point, right? You don't want that guy doing rallies if you're on the Democrat side. And what could discourage that? You also don't want him enjoying his golf game. Maybe that's a plan out there too, right? And is there a history of the feds winding people up to do stupid games and stupid prizes type thing? Yes. So I think it's interesting that DeSantis is going to run his own investigation and kind of find out like what's known about this guy and has he had FBI contact and stuff like that. Because if Trump gets in office, maybe DeSantis is going to be running a task force to root some stuff out too, just like Elon's going to, allegedly, right? We're not even going to cover the RFK Jr. whalehead story because this is a quality show. We have cat memes and Haitians to talk about later. We're not going to have time for whaleheads, but those stories are just being foreshadowed at this point. All right, so in the next block, we have a new homage to current president, former Vice President Joe Biden, because he's fiery, and they really did a good job of rebranding him at one point, Fiery Joe Biden. I think you guys might have missed it. So Matt Orfalea has thoughtfully composed a pastiche, a mosaic, if you will, of these various clips to show how artificial the culture precipitating on the liberal audience it really is. It's like gaslighting central, and Matt is very good at that. And then we're going to go to another Matt, and it's not the Matt in the movie Am I Racist? It's the Matt Walsh who made the movie with the fake guy, Matt, with the hair bun that you're about to see. I mean, I think Matt Walsh was having fun and made a movie at the same time. And it is, you know, simultaneous to those endeavors, he might have some talking points now for people to discuss on these very topics that were very hard to discuss heretofore because they were so racially charged and incendiary. And you know, Scott, just because you don't think you don't have white guilt doesn't mean you don't have white guilt and you need to pay reparations. Like the whole, you know, DEI, all this stuff that's come along, ESG, all this good stuff that's come along, it had origins. And Matt Walsh has gone and addressed the root causes in some cases with the originators of the ideas themselves. And I haven't seen the movie yet, and it's not on Odyssey or anything like that. You actually have to go to a theater to see this movie presently. And if I was going to go to a theater to see a movie, I would go see this movie and I would pay Matt Walsh for it, but I'm not going to the theater anytime soon. That's usually a gun-free zone, by the way. I don't like theaters. Aurora, not the Venezuelans. That was the other Aurora story from back in the day. That was that theater shooting with the DARPA kid, the DARPA mind control, MK Ultra kid. Remember him?
Oh, yeah.
We do have to cover the Georgia story coming up. But before we get to that, we wanted to have some levity, a little bit of lightheartedness. We're going to set the tone, and then we'll go deep, and then we'll come back up. We'll set the tone at humor again, and then we'll go deep, and we'll do that a couple times. Then we'll be at the end of the show.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures. They're hosting videos. They're maybe even doing Q&As. And these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come